Alright everyone, this is a couple days belated, but I need to weigh in on it anyway. I had already made a North Korea, hydrogen bomb test, ICBM video. I believe North Korea is still dragging one of its long-range prototype missiles to its general launching area. People are getting concerned. I'd be concerned too. Before it was like, well, they fired off a missile, who fucking cares? Now it's, oh, well, technically it could be armed with a hydrogen bomb. They probably do have miniaturization. I had discounted the Pentagon's own report. But when the DPRK's own state media is saying, yeah, it's basically true, in fact, it's worse, we've got a hydrogen weapon, and then they detonate something that's consistent with at least a very advanced atomic weapon, as compared with the tests they've done before, to the point where it collapses its own sort of blast site, yeah, I'd be a little more concerned about that. But Nikki Haley went to the UN to talk about it, said, oh, enough is enough, we've kicked the can down the road far enough, and we've run out of road, and basically, oh, these incremental sanctions don't work, we need to do big-time sanctions. No, you don't need to do big-time sanctions, Nikki, because it's not going to work, and you're talking to the UN. You're talking to a room full of idiot bureaucrats. They never know what they're doing. They don't know. What's the UN famous for? War breaks out. Some genocide happens, like Rwanda. The blue helmets show up. What do? Yeah, but fuck nothing. Here, everyone, innocent civilians flee into this hotel, and we'll stand around and hope that we don't get attacked because we're not even authorized to shoot. So, if they actually get in here, they're probably going to kill us. Oh, we're going to save ourselves. You'll all be slaughtered. So we've concentrated you in one place for, the genocide to continue. That's what happened. Did they get involved in Darfur and actually go in and do something other than set up camps for people where they were fed starvation rations and given kind of clean water, and they were attacked anyway at times? No, they didn't do anything. The UN is toothless. It shouldn't even exist. It's so ineffectual. Look, the idea is great on paper. Oh, all the nations come together and try to sort things out diplomatically and try to get involved when, some non-state actor acts up or something like that. Okay, that's wonderful. But it doesn't work in practice because there are too many different nations with too many different economic structures, different societies, different value systems, different everything. It's impossible for it to work. The UN doesn't function. The UN are a bunch of retarded crackpots that can't wrap their heads around the most simplistic human affair without delving into bureaucratic minutia and getting bogged down in months and months of debate. So when Nikki Haley goes before the UN and expects them to do jack shit other than what they've been doing, yeah, good fucking luck. No, you know what your options in North Korea are? Okay, here are your options. Number one, we can abandon South Korea. Just let North Korea take them over because guess what? If they do get full deterrent, which they now are remarkably closer to, according to their own media. I'm not taking it from some fucking lamestream outlet here in the United States. I'll watch their own state media. I'll hear what the Chinese say, because the Chinese are the ones that typically have defended them. They're saying the same thing. Yeah, they've got a hydrogen bomb. Yeah, they're getting long-range missiles. They're kind of moving beyond prototype stage. Yeah, they've got these things. That's all they need, really, and or sub-based weapon systems. They can load they got a 100 kiloton weapon. They can load it in a sub, idle it off the coast of a city, and blow that city to smithereens. They don't need to launch it at the city. They'll put it in a sub. Maybe they'll have 2 or 3 of them strapped together. They can. Why not? It looks like the report was also true that they've got a lot more nuclear material. They might have 70, 80 weapons. So, yeah, it's basically, so we can abandon South Korea and say, well, there's nothing else we can do. It's going to get reunified by force anyway if we wait around. Or we can wait. We can do what China and Russia want us to do, which is basically, oh, we'll suspend our joint drills so that South Korea gets weaker, which is basically the same as abandoning them. And North Korea will promise to suspend its long-range missile and bomb programs. They're not going to do that. It's so naive to think that they will. Now, you can think that's the result of, U.S. warmongering imperialism, so they know not to make Gaddafi's mistake because he dismantled his, weapons programs, and North Korea knows better because they can't trust those pig dog Yankees. Okay, be that as it may. From our perspective, wouldn't it be a bad idea then to draw down in the region? Wouldn't that be a bad idea? Because they're still going to go full steam ahead. So what you're saying to me, even if you support North Korea, what you're saying is they're going to continue. I happen to concur. I happen to agree with your assessment. I don't think they'll draw down at all. They wouldn't give up one weapon no matter what we did. We could evacuate everything in the region. We could leave every base, every stronghold, and every alliance with every Asian nation, not just South Korea. Just totally vacate all of East Asia. North Korea would still keep going because they'd still be convinced that we'd come back. And they wouldn't be wrong to assume that. I just say that Kim Jong-un is a dictator. His people basically are not counted as part of the governing system of North Korea. From a libertarian perspective, there is no people of North Korea involved with decision making. It's one man who does it. In such a situation, if you've got abuse at all, it's solely his fault. So when people say, oh, but the North Koreans have the right to determine their future, they don't determine their fucking future. Kim Jong-un does. Kim Jong-un and a handful of generals. They also threaten to nuke their neighbors, which are non-nuclear states. That's a violation of the NAP quite clearly. Yeah, poor Nikki Haley. We've got other options too. We could try to conduct a preemptive but limited strike. I just don't think it would work. I think if we tried to strike the missile platforms and the nuclear assets, the immediate response would be an attack on South Korea. In fact, it would probably be worse if we did that. It'd be better to get a coordinated and long-term strategy going with Japan and South Korea and prepare to have the South Korean land forces invade while our Navy and Air Force and Japan's help out as much as possible to decrease casualties. This, by the way, entails decreasing casualties on the North Korean side with your strategy. You don't want U.S. troops in North Korea. If they show up, it turns into a bloodbath because of propaganda, number one. Number two, you don't want Japanese land troops there. Japan and the U.S. can supply as much air and sea power as possible. We can sink their navy into the ocean. We can knock their planes out of the sky. We can bomb their artillery and their missile sites. We can do that fairly easily. But we can't actually physically go in because then you've got an army of partisans that you will have to kill them. That will raise the death toll on the North Korean side dramatically. It would be better if we could have a situation where hopefully none of them take up arms. Realize, hey, we're being liberated by South Korea here. The U.S. soldiers aren't present, so we're more comfortable with that situation. To try to prevent as many North Koreans as possible from dying in the conflict. Because who the fuck has a problem with the North Korean people? They live under a dictatorship. It's not their fault. They don't have any part in their government. They're blameless. They're told what to do. It's just like any other situation. It's like within ISIS-controlled zones. If you get some child soldiers or something. Well, yeah, they're indoctrinated, but they themselves, they weren't born trying to be evil or violent or despicable or anything like that. They were indoctrinated by propaganda. Can you fully blame them? No, you can't. You have to defend against their actions, but that doesn't mean you have to go out of your way to make more of these child soldiers. Well, you wouldn't want to go out of your way to make more partisans rise up in North Korea if there is an invasion there. It'd be a terrible idea. Logistically, it'd be a nightmare. These people would begin sabotaging any supply lines you put through into the country anyway. You'd be there for years, as opposed to simply decapitating Kim Jong-un's regime itself, trying to prevent a nuclear response and then silencing the artillery. Air superiority would be easy to establish. The Republic of Korea alone could do this. They wouldn't even need help to do it. It's just a matter of how long it takes. A coordinated assault would help. Instead of a few days, it would last a few hours before North Korea wouldn't even have an air force. Without an air force, a military can't stand up to an assault. We saw this in Iraq. What was the first thing that we began targeting? Airfields, planes, things like that. When we conducted a so-called retaliatory strike in Syria that I still disagree with having conducted, what did we attack? We attacked an airbase. They used the excuse, oh, it's a chemical weapons depot. No, probably not. It was an airfield. But that's the importance of air power in a modern military. Air and sea. It's how you project, at least locally or regionally. Nikki Haley will go nowhere with her attempts with the UN. Because the UN will stall out and do what it usually does. It'll take months to respond, it will be incremental, and it'll be pointless. It's not going to change the regime. It's not going to change the fact that they want better missiles. It's not going to change the fact that they have an active nuclear program. It's no longer an atomic weapons program. It's a nuclear weapons program. That changes the game. It does. People that warned that that was the direction in which they were heading were largely ignored. A lot of people simply said, well, no, they just want to have enough atomic, they just want to try to scare you. It's all propaganda. It's a theater show. I dare say it doesn't look so much like just mindless propaganda anymore. The explosion of their last nuclear test was probably a hydrogen bomb. That means they've gone from mid-40s to mid-50s era technology in a single test. And it didn't even take them 10 years. So how do you, it only took them a couple years. So at that rate, yeah, obviously we're not even slowing them down in their nuclear development. Something should be done. Otherwise, we abandon South Korea entirely and they all get killed. South Korea will be forced under Juche. It will be taken over by the last kind of true communist regime that exists in the world. And it'll become a major player in the world stage, by the way. Look at all the technology and resources it would gobble up. No more food problems. South Korea is way more arable than North Korea. North Korea is mostly mountain ranges. South Korea's got a very large proportion, compared to the North, of arable land. It's also climatically a bit more stable. Suddenly, they're even closer to Japan. They've got a massive coastline. They would inherit any remaining military hardware that happens to be left behind after the fighting, which means they would gain access to U.S. weapon systems too, because they're posted in South Korea. Do you want them getting a hold of an operational THAAD system or something like that? A couple more U.S. Navy assets? I think they have a frigate in one of their docks that they keep as a sort of museum of imperialist aggression. I think, didn't they capture a U.S. frigate, I think back in the 60s or 70s, and they sort of just repainted it and floated it there, and they have some pictures and stuff on it, and you can actually go tour this frigate, a cruiser or whatever it was. Yeah, that's what'll happen. And then Japan will be the next. Why won't they say, oh yeah, a long blood feud with the Japanese because they massacred us by the millions years ago. We're going to take out our aggression on them because they don't have nukes. All of a sudden we have more manpower, a much bigger economy, even if the South Korean economy overall would decline steeply, but still have a good economy compared to what they have currently. Reunified peninsula, access to all the minerals, all the fuel, and all the arable land that they need to support even greater military development. Yeah, what are you supposed to do about that? Once they reunify, there's nothing we can do. We couldn't even land there. They would, it would be kind of difficult. Right now it's easy, and logistically speaking. Then it would be difficult. And that's what'll happen. Nikki Haley talking to you, and you're talking to a bunch of vultures that don't care whose carcass they're feasting on. So why are you even bothering to talk to him? She's the ambassador, she goes to the UN, blah, blah, blah. It's not going to work. UN won't do anything. We need to act within our own alliance, on our own. We don't need to invoke NATO. We don't need to ask the UN for their permission or for their help. It's not necessary. They've already issued direct, credible threats to two of our allies in the region. They've already fired a missile over Japan. That could be declared an act of war. We've shown remarkable restraint, actually, lately. Hate to say it, but DC, for once, is showing restraint. It's doing it at just the wrong time. Never shows restraint in the Middle East. Oh, we need to attack Saddam. We need to attack Assad. We need to supposedly go after Osama bin Laden, who's already dead by the time we invade, probably, anyway. All those, yeah, get involved, stay involved as long as you can. Keep milking that opium teat or the oil teat or something. North Korea, a state that's actually got WMDs and brags about it, that actually threatens its neighbors that are some of our most major allies. No, we can't do anything about that. We gotta talk to the UN. Are you crazy? Is this backwards day or something? North Korea, you're not willing to act on, despite it's 10 times more violent than Saddam ever got. You didn't have a problem invading there without provocation. We never should have even gotten involved. If we hadn't gotten involved in the Middle East, a lot of this wouldn't be happening. Our military would still be, it would be way more advanced than it is now because we wouldn't have wasted all our money. Our economy would be stronger, and we wouldn't even have to worry about North Korea. We'd have twice as many assets in the region that they would never dare attack. South Korea is asking us for help already. Oh, please, yeah, bring a carrier group here and keep it there. We want more THAAD systems. We want bigger missile payloads, which we've given them. We might want nuclear weapons. Do you want to... People so worried. They're worried about, like, North Korea and proliferation. Aren't you worried that eventually they will prevail upon some administration to gain nuclear weapons along with the Japanese? Or that they'll say, well, if the U.S. isn't going to give them to us, we're going to scrap our part in these various agreements not to develop them, and we're going to develop nuclear weapons. All of a sudden, Asia begins to look like, a total atomic wasteland. India, China, and Pakistan already have them. Russia has them posted in their, Siberian regions. There's a lot of nukes in the area. It's the most nuclear continent, actually. It's not North America. It's not Western Europe. It's Asia. And you'd have more, because South Korea and Japan would want them. And if they get them, some of these other states might want them too. What happens if Thailand says, we're getting kind of nervous here. Everybody else has nuclear weapons. We seem like the odd man out. That might be a problem. What about Vietnam? What about, what if Iran does say, well, everyone else in Asia is getting them. We're like the last ones. Everyone's trying to say we're developing nuclear weapons on the sly. We want to nuke the Israelis. We're the only ones that don't have them at this point. We're the ones with restraint, but, fuck that. That's over. We're developing them anyway. Probably World War III erupts at some point because of Asian politicking. While everyone was so worried about it happening over Cuba and missiles there, and like the USSR-US stuff, or maybe happening cross-European, because of the Iron Curtain, everyone's so terrified about that, and that all falls by the wayside. Now it's Asia. It's Asia we're worried about. Pakistan, India, China, the eastern regions of Russia, North Korea now, South Korea and Japan might want them. Everyone else will want them after they get them, which they will if we don't act. The time to act was years and years ago. We should have acted back in the 1990s, except China might have gotten involved. I don't think China would get involved. But talking to the UN's not going to help the situation. Nikki Haley's crazy if she thinks that it will. They want to keep kicking the can. That's all they know how to do. It's a bureaucratic nightmare at the UN. They never accomplish anything. They condemn some country, nothing's done. They slap somebody with sanctions, they're ignored by everyone that voted against it. It's pointless. It's pointless to even fucking have a UN at this point. That's about all. Peace out.